Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, welcome or welcome back to the Wilmac Wire. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today's guest on the Wilmac Wire is a familiar face to us, both Rochester-wise and 911-wise. We've been running into him on the conference circuit a lot this summer, and it's actually where we originally met him. And every time we do, it's just a wonderful conversation. So, needless to say, we're really glad to get him on the show. Today, we're sitting down with Jeremy DeMar, a Rochester native who spent 15 years at Monroe County ECD before going on to lead 911 centers in Springfield, Massachusetts, and New Jersey. He's now on the private sector side and a futurist and thought leader in the 911 space, where he focuses on AI, NG911, and emerging and disruptive technology. He also recently launched his own podcast called Your 911 Future, which I strongly suggest you check out after listening to this episode. We covered a ton with Jeremy, as per every episode, but we discussed with him his career journey, what surprised him most going from public sector to private sector. We discussed AI in 911, which Jeremy speaks on in conferences about often, and what human in the loop versus human on the loop actually means, which was a really interesting conversation and probably could have had its whole own episode, but we'll save that for a future date. We also discussed what Jeremy is trying to build with his podcast and how that his experience in the 911 space has led him to creating this, Your 911 Future. Like I said, go listen to it wherever you listen to podcasts after this episode. Given that Jeremy grew up right here in Rochester, there was a little local flavor in there too. So thank you so much to Jeremy for joining us on the Wilmac Wire. We truly appreciated it and love seeing him at conferences. So I will turn it over to today's episode of the Wilmac Wire with Jeremy DeMar. Welcome to the Wilmac Wire. I'm Emily Miller, joined by my co-host, Steve McDonnell. On this show, we talk with the drivers, the leaders, innovators, and decision makers pushing customer interaction technology and AI forward. And because we're proud to call Western New York home, we also spotlight the drivers in our own community, the people and organizations shaping growth and innovation right here. Let's get into it. Okay, we're going to get things started by introducing our guest. He is a Rochester native who spent 15 years at Monroe County Emergency Communications, working his way up from dispatcher to supervisor. He went on to lead 911 centers in Springfield, Massachusetts, and New Jersey. He's now a futurist and a thought leader in the 911 space, focused on AI, NG911, and emerging technology. If you've attended a public safety conference, you might have heard him speak or saw him work in the expo floor. He's the creator and host of the Your 911 Future podcast. Welcome to the Wilmac Wire, Jeremy DeMar. Jeremy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you both. I feel like I just saw both. Oh, I just did see both of you.
Yep,
so yeah,
last week, not
we've been
too
on
long
that
ago.
conference circuit together. Yes.
Yeah, it's been a busy summer. We've seen you, I think, more than we ever have the past 2 months or so.
It has. It's been good seeing you guys at those shows. It's awesome, especially on a national level. That's definitely a good thing.
For sure. All right, Jeremy, you know how this goes because I know you're a listener of the podcast. But we're going to do a brief icebreaker called This or That to get you a little bit more introduced to our guests. So there's 3 lighthearted prompts, and you can choose either or and then just explain why. Okay, so the first one is Rochester related. Garbage plate or Wegman sub? When's the last time you had a garbage plate?
That's not okay. Well, I'm gonna change it up a little bit. Me 20 years ago, garbage plate. Me today, I'm doing the Wegman sub all day long. Yeah, because I'm gonna have to go to bed at some point, and I want to be able to sleep through the night. So yeah.
Yeah. That's for sure. I think I'm in the boat now where garbage plate is no more.
When is the last time you had a garbage plate?
It's been a minute.
Wow.
I mean, well, of course we're gonna talk about 911. You guys know where ECD is. It's literally across the street
right there
from where they were invented. But even then, I think people suggested at one point, well, you work right across the street. You must eat them all the time. No. I mean, I'm already a big guy. I don't need to be any bigger. But yeah, to answer your question, man, it's I bet I've done more on the homebrewed side than I have on going to a restaurant because I can kind of tailor how they're made a little bit. But an actual from Rochester, I bet it's been a couple of years at least.
We actually, for Telecommunicators Week this year, we asked Monroe if we were delivering a lunch one day, and we're like, "Do you guys want Tahoes?" And they're like, "No, no."
Yeah.
I think it probably depends more on which crew's there, but you know why a lot of them say that though is because inevitably there will be times when like maybe you were running late for work, and I'm going the ECD route with this. You're running late for work, you didn't have time to bring your lunch, whatever it happens to be. The option, the best, the most viable, well, maybe not the best option, but the most viable option is to go across the street. So yeah, when it's there all the time for you to say, hey, you want us to bring you plates? No. Let's do something a little, let's do some Wegman subs. Let's do some Wegman subs.
Hey, we bring Wegman subs into the office a lot, but we've done garbage plates in the past. And every time we do it, everyone in the whole afternoon is like, why did we do this? Or they're like falling asleep at their desks.
Every time my wife and I are in town, we stop at we're name dropping here, right? We stop at Costanza's Sausage out on Basket Road, I think it is in Webster. And I picked up last time I was there, in addition to all the sausage and that kind of stuff, there was this Rochester hot sauce in there, and in fact I had some of it last night. I got this jar of it, and I'm like, yep, it's just nice sometimes to be able to heat that up and use it yourself. So it's cool.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thanks for sharing, Jeremy. Next one for you is hosting a podcast or hosting a webinar.
Well, I'm probably gonna have to default to podcast now, right? Because I want to try to. I do enjoy webinars. We were talking actually before the recording today, and webinars that I've hosted are generally done live, whereas podcast, at least in my experience, nowhere near as experienced as you guys are with it. I'm still very new to that process, but that's the recorded side of it. So I think there's an element of maybe an element of concern and surprise when you're doing a live one versus a recorded format where you can go back and edit out mistakes. So I'll say for the purposes of your question today, I would say the podcast is what I'm leaning more, really, because I'm learning. Right. You guys have already learned a lot. I'm now learning a lot about how to try to make these a little bit better. So
heck yeah. I have an idea for you. I'll pitch you harder afterwards, but we go to a conference and we do a live podcast at the conference.
Yeah. Baby steps. Baby steps.
Baby steps. We'll get through this one first.
I'll just watch you guys, then I'll say, okay, I let them work it out, and then I'll go do it.
Yeah. Love it. All right. And last one, speaking at a conference or connecting with your peers in the expo hall.
Speaking only because I can connect with so many more folks from the 911 community. I mean, my folks I can talk to all the time, whether it be in the, in the expo hall or in, a Teams meeting or something like that. But to really be able to go out and chat with professionals from all over the 911 space, there's no better way to do that than in a speaking session.
Yeah, I love it. I think after seeing a few of your speaking sessions, just so impressed. And I am curious what has been like your biggest audience at a conference? Because you typically get a full room.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of funny stories where because of timing, who my competition, it's friendly, right? I call them competition, but depending on who I'm speaking again, that didn't sound right. Depending on who is running at the same time as I am speaking, they might have more draw than me. But I would say my average, depending on the size of the conference, we did really well at APCO. I did a session on AI there this past week, and man, I want to say we had like between 50 and 55 in that room. It was there was quite a few people in there, but I think a lot of it has to do with topic also, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're talking about something that's really hot, like recruitment and retention or mental health and wellness, I mean, you might have more of a draw. The fact that I was talking specifically about AI and the AI landscape in 911, I find, much like you guys probably do, I find that the folks that are coming into that are definitely the folks that are really trying to learn more about that specific area. And maybe it doesn't foster as much of an audience, but the folks that are there are genuinely pretty engaged. It's good.
For sure. We've talked about it before at conferences, how interesting it is, how the psychology behind like the title of the session, how much that matters. Like it's
and you wouldn't think so. I mean, a lot of time I think there's a lot of folks, that present that think, hey, I'll just pepper AI and everybody will show up. No, it has to be a little more creative. The other side of that though, I've had rooms where I thought it was going to be a good turnout, and I had 5 people show up. And what I've done in situations like that is I'm not going to cancel it. I literally sat down, we all got around this table, and we had a round table session. It was much more intimate, more personal, and we really spent a lot of time. So I can take advantage of either opportunity to really explore with folks and kind of see what's going on in their landscape.
Right.
Yeah, we've definitely seen both sides of that. But I also want to ask, I've seen you speak, you're a phenomenal speaker. How long have you been doing it? And obviously you didn't start at where you are now being a phenomenal speaker. Did it take practice? Was it kind of natural repetition? How did you get to where you're at now?
Well, if my wife were here, she'd probably say all he does is talk and run his mouth. So maybe to some degree it's natural. I don't know. I do enjoy it. In fact, again, I know I've shared with both of you. Actually, Emily and I were talking about this at APCO, but the whole podcasting side of things for me is much more of a challenge when I'm talking to a camera than when I'm talking to a room with 50 or 100 people in it. I'm much more comfortable in that setting, which you'd think it would be the polar opposite.
Yeah.
But best way to answer your question, I would say probably when I was like maybe 2009, 2010 is when I first started. When I moved from dispatcher 1 at ECD to dispatcher 2, and I was doing those things, and then I was working on things for college, and I was doing a variety of different things there, and I really started to get more involved with APCO and NENA. I think that APCO and NENA involvement is really what drove me to want to get out and just kind of reach out and talk to people about a variety of different topics. So it's been, now that I think about it, it's probably been a good 15 years
nice.
of working in the space and doing this. But you only get better at it by doing it and doing it and doing it. And that's why I tell people, if you're even questioning whether or not you'd be good at it, just rip the Band-Aid off and go do it. Just sign up, get in there. And I've had people reach out to me. I've encouraged people. I said, hey, if you have questions, comments, concerns, if there are things that you're not sure about, reach out to me and let's have a conversation, because I love seeing other people in the industry get involved in that. I think it's great.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And we'll dig into that more, Jeremy, talking about your podcast that you recently launched and that sort of thing. But I want to start more in your career journey. So for our listeners, like I mentioned in your intro, you grew up in Rochester. You're a Rochester native, and you got your start in public safety as a high school senior, joining a fire and EMS explorer post. So what kind of drew you into that space?
So I think for me, and again, you had the luxury of me starting my podcast before we actually recorded this one, so you were able to go and watch some of that. So you've got some intel that probably other folks wouldn't even have. But I translate it back to when I would think I was a junior. I don't know if I was a senior. I think I was still a junior in high school. I was working in a movie theater. And actually, we can talk about Rochester. You guys will be able to relate to this. So now it's an AMC on Empire Boulevard. It used to be a Lowe's back in the day.
Okay.
And I started out there working in the concession stand. I was an usher. I did a bunch of different things. But the fire department I was with, Webster Fire, they were like one street over. So like Empire Boulevard's here, and like the gravel road is right here. It kind of runs behind it. So anytime the department would go anywhere to a call, they're going to go this direction or to this direction. So I don't know what the percentage is. We'll call it 50% to make the numbers. Anytime they'd go to a call, I'd see trucks rolling down the street. And I remember even before I was thinking about joining, how much that intrigued me. Like, where are they going? What are they doing? What's happened? And then of course you'd see the police cars going after that. And I always found myself compelled with wanting to know where they were going. Now, there was a guy that was working at the movie theater with me who was a member of the Explorer post for West Webster at the time, and he used to carry a pager around. Of course, anytime these guys went out on a run, his pager, beep, 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 it would go off, and you'd hear the broadcast, and that got me even more interested. I'm like, this is really cool, because now I actually know where they're going. There's nothing worse, by the way, than reading something in the paper the day after and seeing that whoever's reporting on it, it's nothing like what actually happened at the scene. But I remember going up to him and I'm like, hey, what's this thing all about? And he's like, oh yeah, fire department Explorer post, you join it. And then after a few years, you join as a full out member of the fire department. And after a couple conversations, he invited me to one of these Explorer post meetings. And I went up there and you see the trucks in the apparatus bay. I mean, it's the first time for me, I think I was really up close and personal with the equipment, the apparatus. You get in this room with other people that are really passionate about public safety, about the fire service, those kind of things. And I think it just started blossoming from there. And the minute that I found out how I could get more involved with this. Obviously, you had to have your parents sign off on something. I don't think if I was 18, I don't know. I wasn't of age to go in myself at this point, so I think I still needed to have my parents sign off on it to get me in. But once I was in, it was just the sky's the limit. I was just a sponge. I was soaking it all in. I was wanting to learn more and more about this. And of course, the first thing I want to go to the call. And they're like, easy there, Tiger. You got to actually train up a little bit before you just start showing up on scene. But that, I would say, Explorer Post with Webster is definitely where that public safety itch for me first got scratched.
Right. And so you talked about it. You spent 15 years at ECD, and started as a dispatcher. You worked your way up to a supervisor. So what was it like, kind of growing through the ranks? And at a certain point where you're like, okay, yeah, I do want to keep growing in this center.
Yep. So when I started it was February of 2003. When I started at ECD, I was hired in as a dispatcher one. It's so, by the way, it's so cool talking to the two of you in Rochester. I mean, literally right outside. It was funny. Emily was doing a podcast once and I saw the buildings in the background. I'm like, I feel like I'm at home. It's kind of cool. But it's funny. I say that because here we are talking about ECD, which is literally down the street from you guys. But when I started out, it was a dispatcher one police. That's what they were hiring for. I don't remember the exact number of years. I was there 5 or 6 or something like that before I went through that. But I was just excited to be there. At the time, my wife and I, we had 2 kids. I don't think our third one was on the way yet, but I quickly discovered, and we fast forwarded a little bit here in this, but I quickly discovered that I was working career EMS at the time. The unfortunate thing is when you have a growing family and an EMS salary to support it, it's not really conducive. It doesn't really work that way. So that's ultimately what led me to go to take the civil service exam for dispatcher, and ultimately what landed me at ECD.
Were you EMS in Webster? Before you came
I worked volunteer EMS in West Webster because at the time they had 2 ambulances. I don't think the department still has. I think they've disbanded the ambulances. It's now handled separately. But yeah, that's really where Emily talked a little bit earlier about high school and those kind of things. But I took my EMT certification while I was in high school. In fact, that's what ultimately gave me the extra credit that I needed to graduate. I was a half credit shy of graduating when I was a senior. Found that out when it was too late to do anything about it. And one of the folks that was a high-level player, I think with Parrington Ambulance out in Fairport, who was also an administrator in Webster, found out about my plight. We had a sit down, and he said, well, if you can manage and pass a 3 college credit level course with EMT, I think we can give you the half a credit of high school credit. And that's ultimately how I got through high school. EMT saved me in that realm. But yeah, I was doing EMT with West Webster, and then I would later go on to do it commercially with a couple of different providers in the county. But at the time, again, going back to what Emily was talking about, as much as I loved EMS, it wasn't really enough money at the time to support a growing family. So I knew I was going to have to do something else. That's, again, how I ultimately ended up at ECD. Started out as a dispatcher, police dispatcher, did that for roughly 6 years. Took the promotional exam for dispatcher 2. Dispatcher 2 in Rochester, of course, is police, fire, and EMS. It's all 3. Did that for a few more years. And I think at that point I had either finished my undergraduate degree and was just getting started in my graduate program. At any point, I decided I was going to take the test for supervisor. And that's where I would spend the last, I want to say 6 to 7 years of my career with ECD before I would go off and start running centers.
Even going kind of back in between, going from all your EMT stuff to communications, how did you know that that's where you wanted to go? Were you looking at different options at that point? Or did you know, all right, I want to go into ECD. I want to go be in part of the communications.
I'm glad you asked that question. And that's probably good that we're talking about that too. My original plan when I got into the fire department was to be a career firefighter. It was not to go to 911. Never was that. In fact, the 911 thing only came into play because it was, today I would tell you it's directly connected to public safety. Back in the day, I would probably tell you it was an indirect connection. It was something that was closer to the fire service. But yeah, I wanted to be a career firefighter. That was why I was going to college at MCC for fire protection technology. A bunch of the guys that were in my class, when I started doing the math on this, it was crazy. I mean, they've already got well over 20 years with Rochester Fire and some other departments there. But that was the road I was going down. I was going to be a career firefighter. And it wasn't until I had an opportunity with, I was a retail manager for a company called Radio Shack. That was another one that came up in one of my podcasts. But I guess I attribute Radio Shack in some ways to doing some good and some bad for him. Well, maybe it's all good, right? Because the Radio Shack really just solidified my interest in technology, especially emerging and disruptive technology, for as disruptive as it could have been in the early 90s. But also what it did is I had an opportunity to become a store manager, which was ultimately when I decided I'm gonna bow out. I'm gonna quit school. Basically, I'm gonna start pursuing this other opportunity with the Shack, and I'm still doing my West Webster, my volunteer stuff.
Yeah.
But as far as the hard and fast moving towards being a career firefighter, I kind of backburnered at that point. So, the ECD piece, though, because again, loosely connected, now recognizing, of course, it's very connected to public safety. Because it was there, going there allowed me to kind of kill two birds with one stone, right? I could stay doing my things with the fire department. I could still get my fix on the EMS side of things. And now I'm still absolutely involved in all things public safety. So ECD, that's kind of how that whole progression worked out.
Out of curiosity, and I should probably know this, it's naive. I know, so I grew up in Fairport. I know all that. And Pittsford, it's all volunteer.
Yep.
In Rochester, speaking, this is a very Rochester-centric question. How many of the departments are paid versus volunteer?
There's better people to answer that question than me, especially today. I've been gone since 2018. I still obviously know a ton of people up there, but quick answer to that one is a lot of the volunteer departments, which are, obviously City Rochester paid department. Yeah. There's also a lot of the suburban departments out there that are a combination of paid and volunteer.
Okay.
I'm not even sure exactly what that mix is, but at one point West Webster had like a laborer who wasn't a full out, paid firefighter, but it was somebody that could do those kind of duties. West Webster may have, and I hope if my friends are watching this, sorry guys, maybe I'm putting this out a little bit further than I should, but they probably have some career staff now working on a full-time basis. But a lot of the volunteer departments in Monroe County, because of difficulties of challenges with recruiting and retaining their personnel, probably more so recruiting than retaining personnel, but they've had to go down the road of looking at career staff or supplementing with career staff to make sure that they're adequately equipped to respond to emergencies. So where it was really the center of the city or the city proper, that was the paid version of that. Now you're seeing paid opportunities throughout a lot of the county departments as well.
Right. Okay. So, Jeremy, I have to ask, 15 years in Rochester, you moved into director roles in Springfield, Massachusetts, and New Jersey. So what drove that decision to leave? And then on top of that, what was it like stepping into a director role?
Scary, really scary. I can tell you that. So I started the role in Springfield as director started in January of 2018. It's funny because I told some people this story. I literally left ECD on a Friday and I started my new job on a Monday. Like some people would probably say, okay, so maybe he's going to take like a couple of weeks or a month to gather his thought. No. And why not pack up and move down with my little U-Haul trailer to a city I've never even been to before, know anything about, during a snowstorm and move into my, dumpy little apartment at the time. Because again, remember, I wasn't bringing my family with me. They were staying back. They're staying back in Webster. My wife had a job. The kids are in school.
Yeah.
Dad's going to Springfield, going to be living on his own during the week. But yeah, to answer your question, I remember walking out of ECD. I remember it like it was yesterday, walking out of ECD that night and getting into my car and being like, what the hell did I just do? Because I'd been there for 15 years. I mean, it was what I knew. I mean, granted, I was still in the 911 space, but I'm going to a city I've never been to. I'm not taking my family. I'm taking a department head role where previously, there was some nerves there. There was some nerves there, and it took a little while to settle in. I remember the reality for me vividly was when my wife, I think it was my wife, actually a couple of the kids, I think all the kids were down there helping me move in. But I remember, kissing her goodbye, kissing the kids goodbye when they went back to Rochester. And I was like, boy, you talk about reality setting in. I'm just sitting in this apartment by myself. And I'm like, wow.
What grades were your kids in?
What would that was 2018? Well, one of them, Austin would have graduated already. Yeah. So maybe one had graduated, one was close to graduating, and the other one was my youngest, who's now almost 24. She's finishing grad school. But she would later come down to join me in Springfield and end up going to school in Springfield. So it was nice having her come down and join. She actually came down before my wife. We didn't end up buying a house in Springfield till September of 2018. So for the first 9 months, I was down there by myself.
Wow.
And every weekend, this is the crazy part. I had a really good team in Springfield, but every weekend I'd go home. I'd drive back to Rochester every Friday, and then every late Sunday or early Monday, I'd come back in the morning. And I did that for a while just to try to manage it. So there was at least some similarity of a normal life at that point.
Right.
That's a tough lifestyle for
it
9
was.
months.
Yeah. And then I did that twice. I did that with New Jersey too, which we can talk about. But you would have thought I would have learned the first time. It was scary. I'm not going to lie. There's to leave your family, to leave everything that you know, and to go somewhere that you've never really been before, even though it's only one state over and it's only 4.5 hours away. Huge responsibility, huge change.
So you did the same thing with New Jersey, except they were in Springfield at this time.
Yeah. It was actually during COVID, maybe March, April of 2020, whatever it happens to be. And there was an opportunity at a center down in New Jersey. And I was looking to make a change for a variety of reasons, but this opportunity came up. I said, you know what, I'm going to interview for it. If I don't get it, no big deal. If I do, I'll cross that bridge when I got to it. I went down there for a day, had the interview. Within an hour, they called me back and say, hey, we'd like you to come down and run the center for us. So when the opportunity presented itself, I was like, maybe this is the right thing to do. I'm absolutely a firm believer in fate. I think things happen for a reason. I think the fact that I saw that opportunity and that it seemed to be aligned with what I was really trying to do was why I ended up there. So
the traffic from Springfield to New Jersey is probably quite different from the traffic to Rochester to Springfield.
Well, here's the interesting thought. Remember, I left in March, April of 2020, which was right in the middle of the pandemic.
Oh, that's a good point.
So I used to be able to do that commute from Springfield to, it was New Providence, New Jersey. The center was Mountain Valley Emergency Communications, but I used to be able to do that commute in 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, and I wasn't driving recklessly or speeding. I mean, I was being responsible, but yeah, 2.5 to 3 hours tops. And I did that, but as the pandemic kind of waned and people started getting back out on the road again, I remember it was my birthday, probably in 2021. I was coming back for the weekend for my birthday, and it literally took me 6 hours to get home. And I'm like, I'm calling my wife. I'm like, I cannot believe and it was like it was like a Wednesday or Thursday. I was like, this is insane. I'm like, people are clearly back out doing things again. And my answer to that was, instead of taking like the parkways and those kind of things back, I just took 87 up to the thruway and took it across. And that was a better play for me towards the end. So, but a good opportunity nonetheless.
Jeremy, before I move into our next section, excuse me, I wanted to ask, like, you worked in 3 different centers. Were they like vastly different, or did you find like some similar? Like, was it more similar than you thought?
Similarities, yes.
Yeah.
All dramatically different. ECD is, and you guys know, one of the largest per capita centers in the country. Probably averaging 1.2 to 1.3 million calls a year. 84 different law enforcement, fire, and EMS agencies. At least that was how many were there when I left. But, crazy call volume, things can, we had separate call takers, separate dispatchers, 3 supervisors, those kind of things. But going to Springfield, a smaller center, the biggest challenge there, of course, was I had police dispatch in one building on one CAD platform, and I had fire dispatch in another building on another CAD platform. So they weren't even talking to each other. So that was really, for me, that was mission number 1, getting in there. But the call volume was dramatically different. Off the top of my head, I want to say maybe like 300,000 to 400,000 calls a year. So roughly a third maybe a little less than a third of what we were doing in Rochester, which was nice. I'm not going to lie. Coming into the middle of summer in Rochester at shift change, I used to work 4 to midnight, which was 3rd platoon. I think they now have 5 shifts, but at the time we only had 3. And I would come in on like a July or August on a Saturday, and there was, the events were just stacked up. It was so busy. So to go from that to going to a center where they didn't have nearly as much volume, it was kind of nice in a way.
I'm actually surprised Springfield had that less of volume than us here.
Yeah. Population wise, a fraction of what when you look at Rochester right now, and I'm not sure what it is now, but if you take factor in Rochester and Monroe County,
yeah.
At one point I think it was over 1 million. Maybe it's a little lower than 1 million now, but if you included everything, so the size of the population is obviously a big driver on that.
It's just under 1 million now.
Yeah. So, and I know I don't know what the actual 166,000 rings a bell for me for Springfield. We could look it up, but it was a fraction of what Rochester's population was or is.
Okay. So Jeremy, after years on the public side, you've moved to the private side now. So how did your experience working in PSAPs kind of shape how you approach your work now on the vendor side?
I think greatly. And I would say that because there was so many times as a director of 2 centers where I would have, and in fact, it's funny, you guys can appreciate this being in the space. You have vendors and then you have industry partners. Vendors are, they come in and want to sell you their stuff. Industry partners are legitimately there wanting to learn about your business, what you're doing, how you operate, how they can help, those kind of things. So for me, coming from a space where I sat behind the desk and I had my share of vendors come in and try to sell me their wares, even before making an accurate determination as to whether or not I was a good candidate for what they were selling, I really wanted to incorporate a lot of the lessons learned from that being on the other side of the table into what I was doing for the private sector. I think I've managed to do that pretty well and shared a lot of my experiences with my colleagues about, hey, here's some of the things that you can do to really kind of go above and beyond and to really make yourself, put yourself in a better situation with the folks that you're talking to on the other side of the desk. There are far too many organizations out there that, they think the name just gets them everywhere. And it's like, no, you legitimately have to understand the pain points and challenges that are facing this individual. And that's really what you should be doing to address whether or not what you're providing is going to help them. Because if it doesn't, I don't want to just put something in somewhere just to say, yeah, they're a customer. There has to be a way to kind of help them fill that need. And I think my experience all the way from dispatcher all the way up to director of 2 centers really helped me paint that picture for the folks I've been involved with.
So I think it's great. And I feel like PSAPs are unique. I don't know if it's always been like this, and you can probably tell us more, but I see it quite often compared to some of the other industries we're in, that people that were actually sitting in the seat like yourself are moving to the side that's building and creating and trying to help the PSAPs. And I think that's important for the vendor side, the side that's trying to build this stuff to assist the 911, to have that input and have that professional experience instead of people that never sat in the seat and are just trying to develop this stuff. It's great to sit and talk and go on ride-alongs, but it can never replace an actual human being that's been there for 15, 20, 30 years that can sit and help you day to day. So I do think that that's a good thing that the PSAP industry does. Has that always been like that, or is that relatively new?
I feel like you're seeing more of that now. I feel like you're seeing more of the companies that are out there operating in the space. I mean, you guys are on LinkedIn. I spent a little time on LinkedIn, but you guys see what's going on there. But I'm seeing a lot of folks that are leaving the public sector space for private sector opportunities. And I always, and again, I'm a champion for anybody out there that wants to do anything they can do to improve 911 for the people that work in it. And in fact, that's my mission. If people ever ask me, what is your why? Why do you do what you do? I have loyalty to my company, but my biggest thing is to make sure that I'm making the environment better for the 911 professionals that work in it. Doesn't matter where I am. That's my goal. That's my mission. So when you see these companies out there bringing in folks that came directly from the 911 space, what that tells me is that they value that experience. They value that knowledge. They want to be able to incorporate that into their their practices, how they do things, and more importantly, recognizing, and again, this is something I certainly didn't coin the phrase or the terminology, but I've told people many times, if you've walked into one 911 center, you've walked into one 911 center. It's very difficult because of the nature of the work and of this profession to standardize a solution for everybody. It's just not, much as we like to do that from an integrator, from an industry partner standpoint, the 911 profession is very custom. It's very, I need this to do this for me or this for me, whatever it happens to be. So I think that's where these folks that really have that knowledge, that baseline experience and understanding of what goes on from the time of the call to getting it entered, to dispatching it, to doing protocols, EMD, those kind of things. Having that baseline knowledge of how all that works really helps industry partners go above and beyond when it comes to serving their customers.
Yeah, I like the fact that you call it industry partners versus a vendor. I think that's an important distinguishing factor, because even
if you ever hear me refer to somebody as a vendor, I mean that kind of okay.
Gotcha.
Maybe I'm giving away too much.
Ironically, at dinner this weekend, one of our customers said the same thing. He's like, "There's vendors and then there's partners." He said very specifically, customer or vendors that we consider partners that are here in it with us, trying to help our specific center.
Right. And it makes me think too, Steve, of our conversation with Ivan a couple months ago when he brought that up about how often he has to go to the vendor and ask for help, when in reality it should probably be the other way around. If it's a partnership, we should be making that effort to speak to our customers and making sure they have everything they need and not just put it in and leave, So it's a powerful change in terminology and thinking. So I appreciated you calling that out. You answered two of my other questions I had in here when we were talking about your why, which I love that you bring that up, because I'm a big believer in always remembering your why. But I have to ask, what surprised you most about the private sector coming from the public sector?
I would say that I shouldn't say it surprised me, but it was somewhat of a rude awakening when you come from the public sector space, which is in many ways, it's very methodical. It's not tomorrow. I need it tomorrow. Those kind of things. It's very, it's paced, right? It's gradual. Coming into the private sector, it's now, deliver.
Yesterday.
We want the solution. If we're not first, we're last, those kind of things. And again, this is a baseline. This isn't speaking to any one specific organization. It is a baseline of, these companies, these organizations, these industry partners want to get out there. They've got these great things. They've got these great solutions out there that they want to get into the center, but you kind of have to match the pace in many ways of the folks that you're working with. And the sales cycle for a lot of these centers, you guys know this, the sales cycle in many cases is extensive, right? It might be a year, it might be 2 years, depending on what they happen to be rolling out. So there's an expectation on the part of that private sector entity that says, hey, we want to get this in, or we want to have this thing, we want to have all these numbers in by the end of the year, but it's like, this isn't happening until Q1 of next year. So that's, don't even think about that. So there's in some cases a rush, right? Yeah. Maybe a motivation or a desire to kind of move the chains, try to make that process work a little bit better. But I think in some cases that's a mistake, because these organizations, these public sector entities, they may not have control of that.
Right.
And I think that's where that whole relation, we talked a little bit about the relationship piece, the industry partner versus vendor. Industry partner, you're sitting across the desk from a 911 leader and you're saying, hey, tell me about this. You've established what the issue is or what you're going to try to help out by implementing your solution. But I think a big part of that conversation also has to be timeline, right? It has to be, what are your expectations relative to, procurement cycle, how we're going to deliver it, support after delivery, those kind of things. So these are all things that, as private sector entities, I think we kind of expect that folks are going to have that all locked up. But I also think we have a responsibility to help them work through that process, because a lot of folks, especially in smaller centers, this might be the first time they're going through this.
Right.
It might even be the first time that a leader in this space is having to do an RF. Maybe they're buying consoles, or maybe they're buying a CAD system, whatever it happens to be. They may be relying on us as industry partners to provide that additional intel and to have that baseline understanding and that compassion and that empathy when it's not moving quite as fast as we'd like, but we're really kind of we're at the mercy of their systems, their policies, their procedures, their municipalities, whoever's controlling that. We need to make sure that we're cognizant of that throughout that process. I think I answered that. There was a lot of information in that answer, right?
It's spot on. Well, I think, and I do think, I mean, in general, VCs and private equity and that type of capital look at public safety as it can be difficult because you can't really control or force or, doesn't matter how hard you work. They're going to buy at their timeline and how they want to buy. And that's just how it is. And so if you have outside money where the company's under pressure to be like, well, we need to get these sales, it's not going to work very well. So
conversely, you have those situations, which I'm sure you guys love, where they call you up at the end of the year, they've got 90 days left. Hey, I got to spend an extra this. Can you help me spend it? Absolutely.
So it goes both ways. But I think to your point, if you're a partner and can have some empathy and understanding, then you can also set up your business functionally to make sure the business can operate within that. And you can be there at the end of the year when something like that happens. So, and I would
tell this to any industry partner watching this, when you guys finally put this out, but anybody watching this from the industry side, you have to have that level of compassion and care for the folks that you're out marketing your solutions to. I mean, if you don't, it's going to become painfully obvious very early on in the process that, maybe there's an issue with patience or the lack thereof, whatever it happens to be, but you need to understand the needs of your customer. It's not even just 911 or public safety, right? This is customer 101. Understand the needs of the people that you're marketing to, or it's going to be very difficult for you to be successful with selling those solutions.
100%. And even on an elevated scale, like the people that we're selling to, their concern is the safety of their community. So putting that in perspective too is always important to
just
remember.
Add a little more stress to it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let me just pile on. Okay, so Jeremy, I'd be remiss without talking with you about innovation and the disruptive technologies that you talk about often in your speeches and in your podcast and your webinar. So technology, though, in 911, it feels like it's evolving faster than it ever has. Like in the past few years, it's sped up tremendously in my eyes. So you've got NG 911, you've got the AI, real-time translation, connected vehicle data, a bunch of different complex items. So is there anything right now that you feel like is the most exciting to you or that you find yourself reading more and more about?
AI is going to be that's going to be it's how can you not be excited about what's going on with AI right now? And I'll reference that conversation you were asking about, the session I did at APCO. See, we're dating ourselves. I date myself by saying last week because I don't know when this is going to air. But so when we were at APCO in August, and I did that session on AI. I mean, you've got that group in there, and they're just firing questions at you from all different directions. So you go in really wanting to be able to convey to this group, you want to get these certain points across, but inevitably the conversation drifts and goes a different direction, and the what ifs here and the what ifs there. But what I generally try to do in the same line of thinking is what we were just talking about relative to, industry partners going in and talking with 911 leaders. I try to get a pulse of the folks that are in the room to see, okay, what of the content that I'm planning to present are you definitely going to be interested in? And if there's things that aren't in my deck or in my plans to talk about, let's make sure that we get those out as well. But that's to go back to what excites me the most. I would be lying to you if I told you it wasn't AI, because it is developing so quickly, so dynamically across so many different thresholds. If companies right now aren't talking about the work either that they're doing in AI currently or their plans to do it, I just don't know how much of a future these organizations have if there's not aspects of AI. And I say that because unlike a lot of the other technology that I've seen in 911, and I'm sure you guys have seen this as well, when you go into a lot of 911 centers, a lot of times you get folks that, maybe they put the hand up and say, I'm a year and a half, 2 years out from retirement. I'm not going to change anything. Or I want to see what somebody else does before I start rolling these solutions out. You have to remember when you walk into situations like that all of us, when we started out as dispatchers all the way up to directors, we were taught the CYA acronym very, very early on in our careers. So CYA it's kind of that overarching mantra, right? It's that I don't want to do something and risk a problem occurring because of my choice to implement it. I say this because where a lot of the technology that you've seen folks reluctant to roll out, what I've really been impressed with and what surprises me even more is how quickly the 911 community is deciding to embrace. Maybe embrace is too strong a word. How quickly the 911 community is deciding to at least learn more about the technology and what the benefits are of it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you have to go around and you have to talk to a lot of these folks, say, look, I'm not trying to push you one way or the other to procure, to buy, to implement, to deploy, any of those things. What I am encouraging everybody in the 911 space to do, and even not in the 911 space, I'm encouraging all these folks just to learn about it, to get out there, to play with the tools. A lot of those tools don't cost you anything you can get into these frontier models at I think there's still a no cost option. I don't think they've eliminated that. I haven't been in that realm for a little while, but hopefully they're still out there. But that's the beauty of this, is we're giving people the opportunity to get in and learn about it. And I'm really starting to see that at these conferences, at these presentations, people they're soaking it in like a sponge, wanting to figure out how they can roll that out.
That's great. We definitely see it too.
Yeah, and I want to ask too, Jeremy, because I know, like Steve and I, we've definitely seen too a tentativeness around AI for sure. Like you said, you kind of changed the word embrace a little bit, but learning more about like the fear of replacing people, of getting it wrong or something like that, because there is high risk within 911, understandably so. So have you experienced any like pushback in your talks about AI, or like challenging questions or more common like objections that people will raise?
Yeah, when I'm doing my sessions, I try to be very objective, right? I'm trying to not take a specific position on anything. And I do my best to give everybody a voice, to give everybody the opportunity to weigh in. I would say overwhelmingly the single biggest thing that maybe is preventing AI from doing more within the 911 space right now is there's a lot of folks out there that have trust issues. And I don't think it's just in the 911 realm. I think it's an overarching concern about, how much of my internal workflow do I want to release into these models to allow it to do different things for me? Great case in point, the session that I just delivered at APCO, the very last slide we had an open forum discussion on human in the loop versus human on the loop. And because I really wanted to get kind of a baseline understanding as to what people thought about this, human in the loop basically being it's transactional in a way, every single thing that's going on within 911 in a human in the loop model, a human has to approve it. Versus human on the loop, where we start leveraging agentic AI and maybe having 911 professionals, maybe the ones that are being hired in the future, instead of specifically doing a single task like handling a 911 call or dispatching, those kind of things, maybe these 911 professionals of the future are now looking at, managing 6, 7, 8, 10 agents, all doing these different roles, human on the loop. And then we had some discussion beyond that to see what it would look like. But, I think a lot of times when you're having conversations about technology with people, it's very easy to think pie in the sky, never happened, long after my career is over with. You really can't say that with artificial intelligence. It is moving so rapidly that we're not talking about 5, 10, 15 years out. We're talking about 2027, 2028. I mean, we're talking about next year. And that's the crazy thing for me. And I think for you guys as well, because people in this business know, even if they're not doing anything with AI now, you're absolutely going to have AI in the future, somewhere down the line.
So going to that human in the loop versus human on the loop. And I'm with you. I keep my hands on everything AI, not only in 911, but I do feel even more so on 911 because of what type of call taking it is. It's life and death. It's not someone calling in because their credit card didn't work or they need a refund.
Right.
It's life and death. That maybe there's a little bit greater of a trust issue. Totally understand. Everyone definitely has it. You go on anywhere in the media, you'll see it. And I get the 911 having it a little bit more than some other people. And maybe some of the things we talk about it's like a phased approach. Like, let's start with human in the loop, get everyone comfortable with what AI can do, and then bring on human on the loop when you guys feel comfortable with what AI's powers are. That's at least kind of the approach we've been taking, because human on the loop can be like, whoa, what? That true agentic AI is powerful.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I think what's even crazier about that is the number, and I know you both listen to podcasts. I mean, I listen to my share of them, but one of the podcasts I listen to, the guy that runs this podcast, he's very open about the fact that he says, first of all, if you're listening to this podcast, you're already part of a very small group of people that are really, going out of their way to educate themselves on AI. But the thing that he reminds his listeners of periodically is, keep in mind that you're probably in the, I don't know, I forget what the number was, maybe 2 to 3% of the community out there that's actually learning about this and not necessarily embracing it, but spending time learning about it. The gross majority of people out there in the public right now don't know anything about AI. Yeah. All they know about is what they're hearing on TV or what they're hearing their friends talking about. He also suggested in this podcast that the gross majority of companies are not prepared, don't really have a specific AI strategy, which I was like, wow, that kind of boggles my mind. So fortunately, being with an organization now that is, very much embraced AI and is doing a lot of different things in the space, much like what you guys are doing, I don't have to worry about kind of being roadblocked from working with a lot of those technologies. And frankly, as I mentioned earlier, to really succeed in this space, to be able to move, to be able to excel within the 911 and public safety space, you're going to have some kind of an AI plan or some type of an AI-based solution to guarantee yourself any kind of success in the future. I think without that, at some point, it's going to be the kind of thing where they're like, wait, it's not in the cloud. Wait, it's not AI-based. It's not,
right.
On-prem, in my opinion, at some point, it's probably going to be a thing of the past. I think it's already kind of going that way, but I think it's going to be a thing of the past sooner than we think.
We always talk about PSAPs are some of the only industries out there that are predominantly on-prem still.
Yeah. I mean, and again, that's that whole CYA mentality, right? It's legacy practices put into place. So again, even more of a reason why those industry partners that are working in a space where maybe it's cloud-based solutions, maybe it's AI, when legacy dictates that on-prem has been the way it's always been, that's the safest model. It's on us as folks in the industry partner space to say, hey, recognize why you're doing these things. Yeah. But I just want to make sure you're educated on why these are some of the other approaches that might be beneficial to you, and make sure that you are able to address all those questions.
Right. Jeremy, before I ask you more about kind of your podcast and what you're doing with it, I did want to ask you kind of about a specific use case that we're seeing with AI in terms of protecting telecommunicator wellness. You talked about it a little bit before, the retention piece, the wellness piece, how that's always been a draw, and now AI is starting to come into that conversation too. And we're in a similar boat approaching it from the scheduling and staffing side. But how do you think AI can be used to improve the wellness piece?
Number one, we need to keep the whole premise of, we've done a really good job as a profession, as an industry, keeping the mental health and wellness messaging top of mind, right? When I joined, I won't even say it was before 911. It was when I was just in the fire department. It was always, if you had a bad call, if you saw something that wasn't really good, it was, walk it off, dust yourself off and come back in and do your thing. Fortunately, we've gotten away from that. We've gotten out of the point where there are support resources available. There are folks recognize the type of secondary stress and vicarious trauma that our 911 professionals are exposed to as part of the public safety intake process. The beauty of that is that because they recognize that now, we're starting to see from a 911 standpoint, the resources being available, which previously might have only been available to like law enforcement, fire, EMS, for many, many years. And I think in some cases, in some jurisdictions, this is still the case. 911 operates behind the scenes. Very few people, if any, see it. And I think that's why a lot of times we didn't get the support we needed for our 911 professionals. We've definitely seen maybe not a 180. I think there's more work to be done in that space. We can definitely be doing more. Our buddy Roxy Van Gundy, who I know you guys talked to on the podcast a while back. I mean, she's huge on the mental health and wellness thing. And I think it's great that Roxy's taken over, this year as NENA president, and she's really going to be able to speak to a lot of it. But we are definitely seeing improvements in that. in centers throughout the country. How do I think we can continue to leverage that? I'm going to go back to the AI discussion. When I think about things like sentiment analysis, gesture recognition, some of those different areas, especially when we talk about those centers that are bringing incident-related imagery into their center as part of workflow. So, via IRI, it's going to be still images, streaming media, video, those kind of things. Since the first 911 call was taken in February of 1968, our job has been one of listening. We've all become incredible listeners. We can hear things during a conversation that the average person could never hear, but we've never had the visual piece, right? We've never had the visual side of that. So now we're suddenly going to plunge our folks into this space where not only are you going to hear it, but now you're going to see what's happening as well. Many directors, many 911 leaders in the space are convinced that this is going to have negative implications on their people, potentially getting people to leave the profession early, retire early, or those new folks that are coming in. I don't want to look at it. I don't mind listening to it. I don't want to look at it. Now, we could do a whole separate session on IRI because I think, Emily, Steve, you might know, this is what I spent my graduate studies working on and wrote a thesis on this. But I think by and large, the biggest concern that a lot of these folks have is because we're changing the dynamic by which 911 information is coming across. And we're kind of having our hand forced a little bit in this because everybody carries one of these things around, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to be able to interact and engage with 911 the same way they can ordering a pizza or, buying airline tickets, whatever it happens to be. So there is kind of a push on the part of the public to say, hey, we want to be able to send pictures to you. How do we deal with that? When we talk about it from an image standpoint, if I'm a 911 leader and I'm reluctant to have my people looking at those things, maybe I leverage AI to do image analysis for me. Maybe I'm having it evaluate video. Maybe I've got a camera pointing at my telecommunicator, my dispatcher, whatever it happens to be. And through gesture recognition and sentiment analysis, maybe it's identifying, hey, this person is exhibiting signs and symptoms of PTSD or vicarious trauma, whatever it happens to be. Now I've got an extra leg up. Before, as supervisors, we were limited to what we knew was going on at the time on the floor. Maybe there's a bad accident. Maybe there's a domestic problem that resulted in an assault and somebody getting injured. We only had that information as supervisors that we were aware of as part of a call that was going on. Now I've actually got this separate tool, this AI-based tool running in the background saying, hey, your operator at position, whatever it happens to be, just had a CPR call on an infant or there was a drowning victim, whatever it happens to be. The floor got really good at making sure that we understood that there was a big event going on, but wouldn't it be nice, especially on a busy day, to have other platforms, AI-based platforms saying, hey, heads up, your call taker over here is dealing with this, your dispatcher is dealing with this. I think that's really, for me, that's the force multiplier, is how AI is going to help improve those situations and really identify for us the folks that might need more assistance.
We could have a whole podcast around that.
We could.
I have like 20 questions, but I'm like, we could. Around. But I think that's great.
I love talking about incident-related imagery, by the way. If you want to do a separate one, we'll do that sometime.
Yeah,
well, it's interesting because I think some of the most important use cases in 911 with AI right now are coming out on non-emergency cases. So, the actual humans shouldn't have to deal with, it'd be nice if they didn't have to deal with non-emergency, they could focus on what
they shouldn't. Yeah. I mean, you are a 911 professional. Yeah. You are an emergency communications professional. And dealing with somebody's barking dog or an illegally parked vehicle, you should not have to do that. I'm sorry. And I think that, we haven't talked today about like consolidation efforts or regionalization efforts when it comes to 911, but I think, in my opinion, that's what's happening, especially with a lot of these smaller centers when these communities come in and, they've had this person that's been out at the reception desk answering their phones and pouring coffee and greeting people. We can definitely be good with people when we have them on the phone, but a lot of those things that a lot of these agencies that are consolidating, they expect they're going to get that same, I hate to call it this, but that hand-holding level of service. And frankly, in a 911 center, that's just not possible. So non-emergency call diversion, I love it. I'm telling you right now, if I was a director at this time, I'd be having those conversations because I want to steer as much of that away from my people as possible.
Yep. And I think we see a lot in the centers. They talk about it a lot. But to your point, you're talking about the world has turned into with our phones. Obviously, you just held it up. Everyone, if I were in a 911 emergency calling about someone else, I would probably want to FaceTime to be like, hey, look at what's going on rather than me try to articulate it. But on the and so I can see the public wanting that, but on the flip side, to your point, yeah, that's traumatic. I don't want to deal with that. But that's another perfect use case for AI to pop in. So
yeah, and we haven't really talked about recruitment or retention, which continues to be the single biggest problem facing 911 right now. But you've got the folks that have been doing it for 15, 20, 25 years, maybe those that are close to retirement. They're accustomed to doing things a certain way. And then you've got this newer, younger generation. I remember when I was the young guy, I'm not that anymore, but you got this newer, younger generation coming in, which they're in many cases a little bit more tech savvy, maybe a little bit more accepting. However, we also know there's some issues with, maybe they're not quite as tolerant as some of the folks that have been doing it for a while when it comes to like forces, mandates, being forced to stay and those kind of things. So we have that generational piece is something that has to be worked through as well. But I think when it comes to things like imagery and those things coming into the center, maybe some of the younger folks that are coming in because they're coming into it and it's a newer thing, maybe that's something that they would be more adept to deal with or more open to be dealing with. I don't know. Nobody's got that figured out yet. It's still, if there was one thing I can tell you I walked away from after doing my research for my thesis, it's that more research needs to be done. I can tell you that much.
I love it. Well, thanks for sharing about that, Jeremy. I appreciate your input. Like Steve said, I think we might have to have you on again to dig even deeper. But I like I said, before we wrap, you just launched your 911 Future podcast, and it's focused on career growth, on leadership, and just on the future of emergency communication. So what inspired you to create it? Who are you hoping it reaches? Just share it with us so our listeners can hear it too and tune in.
Sure. So I try to keep the title simple. So your 911 Future, you can go to YouTube and find it there. I've got a Facebook page. You can go there and like it. That'll give you the announcements for when the new ones are coming out. Quick answer to your question is when I started in the 911 profession, depending on who the individual is, you're going to get some people that want to come in and their immediate goal, and I certainly fell into this category, was, all right, I'm going to come in, I'm going to do my time in this position, then I want to promote into this one. I'm going to do my time here, then I'm going to promote, it's, you're fast tracking yourself. So for me, I think that was a big driver behind why I started this, because the one thing that I really we had a great director who supported me in a lot of different ways and did a lot of cool things, allowed us to get out and do a lot of different things within the 911 community, which was awesome, because I know there's a lot of directors in the country that maybe they don't have the wherewithal to do that. Maybe they don't have the budget for it. My director, John, at the time was great about letting us do that thing, but I really had to figure out how kind of that career path worked out. I mean, aside from, okay, here's the test for dispatcher 2, here's when it comes out. What can I do to prepare for that? What can I expect when I take the civil service exam? What types of things am I going to have to do? Should I get promoted in that position? How does that role differ from here? So a lot of those things you can answer internally, but I think as you start to move up within the 911 space, especially when you start to look at administrative, supervisor, director level roles, there wasn't really a resource out there to say, here's what you should be doing. Here's some of the things that you should be reading. Here's the certifications or the credentials you should be seeking to do that. So what I really sought to do with your 911 Future, and again, I think I've recorded one episode. There's another one going to be coming up soon, but it's very early on in the process. But what I really want to be for the 911 professionals out there is a resource, right? As somebody who's sat in a variety of different seats over the course of the last 20, 25 years, now being in the private sector, I want to encourage folks to reach out to me and say, hey, you know what? Maybe I just started. Maybe I've only been here a couple of weeks, but I love the job. What's next? Or maybe I want to know about, APCO RPL or NENA ENP, those kind of things. I want to learn about those. A lot of times you have to, there's a lot of information online, but outside of that, people didn't really know where to go. So if I could be that mentor, if I could kind of help people move up within the profession, and God knows, we need amazing leaders. We need incredible leaders. We have so many awesome folks that are nearing retirement right now that are moving away from the 911 space, which is creating these openings. And every time that happens, you've got to have some kind of succession plan in place. I want to really help those leaders of tomorrow. I want to keep that interest there, but I want to make sure that I can kind of help guide them along the way. And if it means pointing them in the direction of a specific certification class or credential or going to school something for whatever it happens to be, that's really what the podcast is all about. It's about leadership. It's about understanding what it takes to move up within the 911 profession. It's identifying the areas where opportunities may come up or may pop up. And of course, technology was going to be a big part of that. So technology, leadership, and moving up within 911. Those are the three kind of target areas I'm really going to be focused on.
Yeah, that's wonderful and so exciting to see it kind of come into fruition. Like you said, you've spoken for so long. Like, let's put those thoughts out there even more and just keep distributing them. Because someone I'm sure is very glad to hear it. So wonderful. Yep. Thanks, Jeremy. Steve, do you have any other questions for Jeremy for our guests before we wrap up?
This has been great. I'm very excited to start listening to your podcast. Congrats on getting that going. I think it's very important to mentor young people, especially in 911 centers. I don't have the background you have, but if there isn't those people out there doing that right now, I think it's great that you're stepping up in that position. It's very important for the younger generations to know exactly, what the possible roadmaps they have into leadership spots. So kudos to you on that.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think when you talk about like police, fire, and EMS, very visible to the public. Yeah. People tend to know about it just from seeing them in the public. 911 is still kind of the great unknown, I think, for many, especially the people that are just joining the profession. So hopefully I can be a resource to them.
Thanks, Jeremy. Is there anything else that we didn't chat about in today's conversation besides your podcast that we can encourage our listeners to listen to or that you'd like them to know about?
We've chatted about a lot today. I don't know. I don't know what. I don't know. One of the things I can talk about is the work that I've done with both NENA and APCO on the standards development side. So if you have folks out there that don't really know what they can do to get more involved, and maybe they think they have some they think they're restricted because there's money or funding that's associated with their involvement in these kinds of things. It's very easy to get involved virtually in these committees and these working groups and really be a part of affecting positive change within the 911 space. So I've chaired these groups, I've vice chaired them, I've just been a participant. But the beautiful thing about this is this allows folks from all over the country, regardless of where they are in the 911 space, to get involved and learn a lot about the inner workings of what's going on from a standards development basis. So that would probably be the only other thing that I would say. Man, get involved, especially the newer folks that maybe want to, just don't know how to start.
Yeah, and like you said about speaking, the best thing you can do is try it out, and then you can learn.
Yeah, so. I hemmed and hawed with this podcast for the longest time, and finally I said, you know what? I'm just going to go. I'm going to go record something and see what happens. I've been thinking about it for months, but
good for you.
You guys might have actually had a little to do with that. And then I was watching. I think the bigger thing for me was spending the amount of time that I spend on YouTube, which is probably way too much, and saying, if I'm sitting here watching this much stuff, other people will maybe watch my stuff. So maybe that's why I did it. But.
Heck yeah. Love it. Well, thank you, Jeremy. That's wonderful. I encourage all our listeners to check out Jeremy's podcast, Your 911 Future, available wherever you listen. So Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us on the Wilmac Wire. I have to call out for our listeners, if you don't follow Jeremy on LinkedIn, you definitely should. He is a great personality on LinkedIn. A real joy to see all your posts, and you can find him at Jeremy DeMar there. And like we talked about earlier, you can find him speaking at public safety conferences. So definitely look out for him if you're going to any of the ones coming up. All right, Jeremy, that's all we got for you today. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thanks for having me on the show,
Jeremy.
Guys. Take care.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Wilmac Wire. If you liked today's conversation, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or watch full episodes on our YouTube channel. You can also learn more about Wilmac Technologies and our work in customer interaction technology at wilmactech.com. We'll be back soon with more conversations with the drivers, those shaping our industry and those building right here in Western New York. See you next time.